Good afternoon, Crystal. We are live.
Yes, we are.
Good to see you, ma'am.
Hey,
Welcome back
everyone.
from way far and abroad.
Yeah,
I
in the
I,
London, in the London.
yeah. I have a confession.
What's that?
Not only am I jealous that you got to go, but I forgot your bio at the house. So I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself, if you would,
Okay.
and and then we'll talk about our topic today, which is 5 questions that I'm getting somewhat regularly from participants here in the last couple of quarters.
Okay.
I've got a
My
total of about 11, but we'll see if we can get through the first 5 today.
okay. Sounds good to me. My name is Crystal Mitchell. I'm a business coach and consultant, and I do coaching and business readiness for small business owners, micro business owners, at every stage from startup to growth to succession. And I provide tools and mentorship and training to help them be successful at every level.
Great, great. And
Hmm.
thank you so much for joining me. Thank you so much.
You're
When am I going to be
welcome.
a guest on that show with you and that other guy?
That other guy,
Um,
Gilbert, anytime you want to.
You're not hanging out with me, you're hanging out with him.
Yeah, anytime you like to, we will have you on.
Okay.
Yeah.
As you know, I am a retirement plan advisor. I help people get to the point where they're going to actually start living on those assets in retirement. And so I
Hmm.
get a lot of questions actually on either side of that line. So, like I said, I have about 10 or 11 of them here. And how about if we just go ahead and talk to them? Did I give you the list? Do you have the
You
list of
did.
questions?
So let me pull up
Okay.
my from my side over here. Okay, let me see. I think I pulled it up somewhere over here. Oh, here it is. Okay,
Okay.
yes,
So
I
if
have them.
you Great. So if you have a follow up or if you have something you want to say about that, as you know, please jump on in. Okay. So, question number 1, during a volatile market, when the market is plummeting, how do I take advantage of earnings and yet know I can still have enough to retire on? Okay, so this is kind of an interesting question because I believe it assumes that you've already got the money that you've already built up your savings, and we're
Hmm.
talking about um, and if we're talking about being at that point where you're starting to withdraw money, then that's one point of view. But I think if we start talking about, all right, what do I do right now before that situation happens, we can talk about that. So when
Hmm.
it comes to how do we know how much money you're going to have when you retire on, um, well, first of all, do you have anyone in that situation? Anybody you ever talk to thinking that they've
Um.
retired and they're like wondering what to do?
Yeah. Especially after the pandemic, a lot of people, their companies, were going through some challenges. So some of them were asked to retire, but they
Hmm.
weren't quite ready to retire. They money
Mm,
wise, they weren't quite ready to retire, and so it was a concern. And some, it's like, okay, I'll do that, but that meant they were going to have to leave a pretty frugal life because it wasn't
mm,
quite at the levels that it should have been at.
right. Okay. Yeah, makes sense. All of a sudden you get to retire. Yeah,
Yeah,
many of
right.
us need a few more years.
Yeah, we're ready for
I think
retirement, but you got to retire.
exactly, exactly. I think this question is more about since they're talking about earnings, um, that pre-retirement stage. And that becomes a mathematical equation in a lot of ways. Once you determine what your bills are and what those how much money you need to cover those bills, then it becomes a simple formula of okay, you're going to live X amount of years with this amount of bills. How much do I need? And if I'm going to take X amount of out, let's say 4% or whatever, I'm going to take whatever that is amount out. Now I've got some numbers I need to deal with, and you can see that we need to save X amount to get there. But then there's that part about the question that says, how do I take advantage of earnings and yet still have enough to retire on? And that makes me think that, okay, maybe they're talking about when I'm in retirement, how do I take advantage of earnings and yet still have some money to retire upon? And I know over here where I work, this particular client, we have 3 or 4, can we say, product strategy. One of the things I like about this advisor that is my client is that he doesn't try to make your portfolio complicated. He tries to make your portfolio as simple as possible. So he looks at, okay, we've got to grow some money because we're going to be in the market for a long time. We never know what happens. So some of our portfolio needs to be in the market and needs to grow. We've got a need for stability as well, right? So maybe we need to have like a few months set aside so that just in case something happens to the market, that we can withstand that. And then we've got kind of a middle section there that says, okay, I still need some, let's call it shorter term growth. I still need some opportunities for the bulk of this money to grow. And, and depending on what your comfort level is, you can switch those around. But the key is to have a strategy where you have a few investments, and I'm going to say no more than 5 or 6, and then have someone manage those investments for you so that you can meet the need. And of course, you can't take advantage of the market if you're not in it, right? So the answer to that, the part of that question is you got to be in, but you have to be in at a level to where you can grow your portfolio and you can also sustain what you have. And then you can also have an emergency fund. That's what I think is the one of the best ways to think about that. And the best way to do that is to connect a financial advisor and talk about what your needs are and figure it out, because it's going to be all based on how much you think you're going to make in the market and how much you've saved, how much you've put away. And that brings me to something very disturbing that I heard about today. And I'm wondering if you've heard about it. It's called pig butchering. Have you heard of that?
No, I have not. And what does that refer to?
So pig butchering is a term, and I think it's worldwide. I think I saw some folks in China that are experiencing the same thing. It's a situation and where a person will, over a dating site, get someone interested in them and then convince them to give them the assets that they have, be that in a 401k or a retirement plan, and then ghost that person.
Oh, wow.
They get them interested and they get them to sign over some money, and then they disappear from their lives. And the analogy comes from finding a pig, fatten it up, and then taking it to slaughter.
Okay.
That's the thing.
Wow.
And it's just
So
a horrible thing. And of
that's
course, what's that?
That's horrible.
Isn't it horrible? And of course, in this particular thing, most of the victims are women between the 40s and 60s. So they are about ready to retire, or they've certainly collected some assets, be that many assets or not. And they're at that point in their life where they're getting kind of lonely, and someone paying attention to them is a good thing. And then they get sucked into this horrible situation. I definitely don't want to comment on anyone's love life. I'm not that guy. But I would caution all of our viewers that if something sounds really good to you with regard to what your financial advisor is saying, or someone that you just met, be they on the internet or one of your cousins, whoever, always, 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 always feel free to get a second opinion from another advisor about the strategy. Always do that. Don't think you have to just trust this person because they seem to know what they're talking about. So please, you can always call up an advisor and say, hey, can I borrow an hour of your time? Can you take a look at my situation and take a look at this strategy and tell me what you think? I've never met a financial advisor that would say no to that. Never, ever, 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 ever. So don't think you have to do this alone and you have to trust someone. And when it comes to that relationship, when you have with that person, as tough as that can be, we are talking about your money. So, and unfortunately, that's the way I look at things. So I'll just tell everybody now, I'm thinking about your money. So until you get married and you have joint money and that ring is on your finger, I'm thinking it's your money. I don't care what that person has promised you. I don't care if you've gone through the testing at the church and that you've got I don't care. It means nothing to me. I'm coming from the point of view, your money. So I had a conversation with a young lady last week and she says, well, we're going to get married and he's got the kids and I just want to know what job thing. And I said to her, I don't know about gonna be. I don't know about maybe with the kid. I don't know about that. I just know about right now. Right now, you need to feed yourself and take care of business. What makes you happy now, right? Once you get married, well, now that's a whole different ballgame. We got another thing to talk about there, and that's fine and lovely. That's not who we are right now. So that's how I think about things. Now, if you have the problem where I'm the only one you can come to for marital advice, we need to have another discussion.
But here's the thing I think, and it's so interesting, and I know AARP does a lot of outreach in this area. Um, it's something about I think the largest scammed population or demographic is that age between 50 and 75. And I know these individuals work in corporate environments and are not naive to be sucked in by any Joe Blow that comes along and says, "Give me your money," right?
Right.
It just kind of baffles me, especially when we talk about their retirement money. It's one thing if a person finds them way into your bank account because you gave them the password or the PIN code to you or gave them a card, but into your retirement plan that you didn't work 40, 50 years to get to. How the heck does people get to? I mean, there are people that refuse to divorce because they don't want to give up half their pension. So how do you allow a stranger? I mean, this is someone that you've been living with, that you've been married to, and you're like, okay, no, I can't divorce him because I just cannot keep giving him half my pension. So you stay in that part of the house, I stay in this part of the house, and to death do us part, we gonna stay together. But you let a complete stranger from Joe Boo, Timbuktu come along and you say, here are my assets. I'm sorry.
Right. Loneliness is a big, is a tough motivator, and you get that love and those kinds of things. And, not to cast aspersions on people from Timbuktu, but I've never liked them anyway.
and I guess if I in any kind of dating platform, come after my money, and that's the end of that relationship.
Right? Well said.
Ask me for money, and we dating, and you not my husband. Oh yeah, that's it. It's done, dude.
There you go.
I'm after my money. You might break my heart, but don't be coming to my bank account.
And don't think that you're too smart. I think you just have to be wary because people can be sneaky. Maybe it's not you giving me money. Maybe it's investing in a particular company. Maybe it's helping this thing get started, or maybe it's I don't know who knows what it can be.
It's
your grandchild's prison thing or something. I don't know what it is, but just make sure that when people start helping you plan your future or needing help for you, that you be very, very careful, because this term pig butchering, oh my gosh, but that's exactly what happens. And I think that's an apt term, because you are being fattened up, because often they are finding ways for you to put more money some particular place. And then all of a sudden you transfer the funds and you don't
Yeah,
hear
I
about
think
it, and then
I do think some people are too trusting of other people. I'll say that, but yeah, just you guys be careful in that space. And if it sounds too good to be true, it truly is too good to be true.
to be
Um,
true.
and you've worked way too hard for your retirement monies, and yeah, as it is, you probably worried that it's not going to carry you through to your lifetime. So it truly is not going to carry you through if somebody else comes along and it becomes part of your retirement, and you're not part of your
Yeah,
retirement, but they're enjoying their
exactly.
retirement. So yeah, be
Yeah,
careful out there.
yeah.
But no, I had not
Okay, so
heard of that. I've heard of ghosting, and I do know
mhm.
single women, younger women, have gotten caught up. I guess there's a guy out that's been out there for years that has just been raking money. He goes all over the world, finding vulnerable women and taking all their money, and then he disappears. They ghost him. I've heard of that, but I had not heard of specifically targeting one's retirement monies.
Is that something or what? This
That's
was great.
that's all kind of no. That's just not right. I'm sorry. That's just not right.
It just isn't. It just isn't.
Mm-mm.
Okay, how about if we move on to question number two?
Mhm.
Question number two is, how should I take my money out each year from my retirement account to know I can live with that amount plus my Social Security? And again, this is more of an algebra question, right? So we know, or we should know, depending on how old we are, pretty much what our needs are going to be. What is that number, right? And then, of course, as we know, this question begs the question, um, what's your number? What plan do you have to get there? And can you stick to that plan, right? So
Mm.
the big question is, all right, I'm going to retire at 65 or 70. My family
Mhm.
history is that we generally die at 65 or 70, so I'm not making a plan. Or my family history, especially with medical advancement, would suggest that I'm going to live to be 115. Okay, from 70 to 115, that's 40 some odd years
Mhm.
that you've got to pay rent or you have to do something in order to live. Oh, so what are your expenses? What's going to happen 40 years from now? Which is kind of tough, but what is that? What do you think that number is? How are you going to
Mhm.
get there?
Mhm.
Is that a proven method of how you're going to get there? And can you stick with it to make sure it happens? So it boils down to those three questions. What's my number? Do I have a plan to get there? And can I do that?
Mm.
So once you get that, the other part of the equation is, in general, we expect that the market will grow, and when we say market, we do mean a combination of stocks and bonds, equities, and fixed income. That you
Mhm.
want to place those monies in the market so that you can grow your portfolio by at least 4 to 5%, and 4% is what we're thinking you're going to want to be taken out. The
Mm.
golden number with regard to how your portfolio is going to grow and if it will sustain you is that I can take 4% out a year. So translation in my mind is I'm going to grow that. I need that portfolio to grow by 4 to 5% at least, so that when I take some money out, it's not going to sink my principal. So
Mm.
that's the golden number. We used to say about 6%. Now we're looking at about 4%.
Okay.
So with that in mind, what are your expenses? If How are you going to live on 4%? We've got this algebra problem that we're going to do. I need to take 4% out a year. This is how much I've got. How much more do I need? How much do I need to save in order to get there? A lot of times we talk about the three questions. What's my number? Do I have a plan to get there? And how am I going to do it? So
Mm.
that's it. I would count on the 4% and don't forget about Social Security. Don't forget about that. The nice thing about Social Security is that here lately it's been indexed, right? So at least you get a little bit more money depending on how old you are and what situations they are.
Okay.
Okay, then the next question is, what will be my biggest tax liabilities after I retire? And that's kind of a funky question because, oh, as you know, the tax liabilities you have before you retire are pretty much the ones you have after you retire. You don't get taxed more after you retire.
What is that referring to? Is your Social Security and your retirement money taxed?
Now let's kick that one around a little bit. First of all, I'd like to say though that my father just moved from Alaska down to Arizona. And because my father was a senior citizen, he didn't have to pay property tax on the house, which is kind of a big deal. So the house is paid off and you don't have to pay property tax. That's kind of
Mm.
cool.
Mm-hmm.
He just bought this house down in Arizona. I don't know what that situation is, but I bet my bottom dollar that he's paying a little bit more. But anyway, so there's that. Something to consider. Um, how are those monies taxed? Well, unless you're in the Roth section of an IRA or section of your 401k, it doesn't matter which, the money that
Mm-hmm.
you pull out of there is not going to be taxable. So the money that you pull out of your 401k plan is in what we call traditional investing. The money that you
Mm-hmm.
pull out of your IRA that is in traditional investing.
Mm-hmm.
The money that comes out of your required minimum distribution from your 401k or your
Mm-hmm.
IRA, those four items are taxable. So you're going to have to pay tax on that.
Okay.
The thing that messes up many people, and it's been an advertising thing for a lot of folks that I that I've dealt with, is that they believe that all that money that's inside your 401k, all that money that's inside your IRA, that is um, at a that you put in the traditional manner, that you're going
Mm-hmm.
to be taxed on all that money. And while that's true, you're only going to be taxed on what you pull out at the time. So let's say you take your money inside your 401k plan, you roll the whole kit and caboodle inside an IRA, and you
Mm-hmm.
hire an advisor to manage those assets for you. And they set up various accounts inside that IRA, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you only have to pay tax on the money that comes out of that IRA and goes into your checking account or into your hot little hands. So while it's in the IRA, you don't have to pay tax on it. While it's still in your 401k, and you could leave it in your 401k if you have more than $5,000, you could leave it in there. Well, currently you could leave it in there forever, right? So you don't have
Mm-hmm.
to take it out. And in fact, I remember talking with folks about this question, and um, that kind of begged the situation of, all right, so should I take the money out of the 401k where it's protected? And there are many companies out there that are seeing the 401k as kind of like a safe place for people's investment because they have
Mm-hmm.
some oversight there.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're encouraging their participants to leave their money there and set up payment plans inside the 401k or annuities inside the 401k to actually generate income for folks. So don't be surprised if you happen to be working for a company like that. But the long and the short of it is until you roll that money out of your 401k and I'm sorry, and into your hot little hands or out of your IRA into your hot little hands, you don't have to pay tax on it. So keep that in mind. Social
Okay.
Security, yeah, you're gonna have to pay tax on those Social Security assets. Medicare, no, that's a bill. You're not paying tax on that, but
Mm-hmm.
but you will pay tax on that Social Security. So you want to keep that in mind there.
Okay.
Um,
And I know quite a few people wondering. I think I actually asked this question of you. Somebody had asked this question of me, and if they made something about if they made more money, they wanted to retire um, they were retiring early at age 62, I think.
mhm, mhm.
So of course the age has been moved up to 67, and if they still worked, did they, and they had their own business, if they still were drawing the profit from their business as income, would that be taxed? And I think our general consensus was yes. But
Yeah,
they
if
needed
you're,
to talk to somebody, a
yeah,
financial person, a CPA, to make
yeah.
sure what that looked like.
So it seems like to me the only thing that changed in that scenario was that they'd hit retirement age, but they're still working. Am
Yeah.
I hearing that correct? Yeah. So
Mhm.
nothing's changed. You get taxed on that money the same way that you would be before you retired. There's no
Okay.
difference. Yeah.
Okay.
Um, yeah, they don't. I think maybe another scenario you might have been talking about was if they have money inside a 401k uh, and they're past, let's say 75 now, and they're the owner of the company, and
Mhm.
they avoid the required minimum distribution, and then because of that, not pay tax on the monies that come out of the plan, right? Can they avoid taking that RMD? And the
Mhm.
answer to that is they cannot avoid taking the RMD if they are the owner of the organization. However, if they work for the organization, like they're an employee of an
Mhm.
organization, and they reach that retired minimum distribution age, they don't have to take the required minimum distribution from the 401k. They still have to take
Mm.
it from their IRA. They still have to
Mhm.
take it from their 401ks that they had before. So, for example, for many of the people that you help that are in their second chapter,
Mhm. Mhm.
and they have a considerable amount of money inside that 401k plan, and then they
Mhm.
leave that company and they take those assets and they roll them into an IRA, and then
Mhm.
they become 75, I think it's 73 this year. They become 73 and they get a bill from the mutual fund company where they have their IRA or their bank or whoever.
Mhm.
And that notice says you have to take your required minimum distribution. How do you want to do that? And they can spread it out along amongst the year if they want, or they can take it all at one sum, however they want to do it. The idea though is they're going to take that money out and they're going to be taxed on it. So, so that's
Eh,
if you own the company.
okay.
If
Okay.
you work for the company, right? If you are a Joe employee, or if you're in the corporation, like the share owners own the company, and you reach
Mhm.
that ripe old age of 73, and you're looking at, okay, I'm still working for this company. Do I have to take my required minimum distribution? And the answer to that is no, you don't. As soon as you leave the company, now you have to get on that track for taking the required minimum distribution. But beforehand, you don't. And I tell you, this is this comes up in my world in a couple of different ways. Let's say you are you're still working for that company,
Mhm.
and you decide that you need to take X amount of dollars out to go on vacation to Paris. So your required minimum distribution is coming up. And let's say
Mhm.
your required minimum distribution is $10,000. Let's just say that. I have no idea where that came from, but it sounds round. So you decide to take $1,000 out every month. And by
Mhm.
the end of your 10th month, you've met your goal for the required minimum distribution, and you owe taxes on that $10,000. However much was left in there, you don't owe taxes on that. But for that $10,000, you owe taxes. Let's say next year comes by, you're still working for the company, but you decide, I don't want to take my required minimum distribution. As long as you're still working for that company, it's my understanding that you don't have to take your required minimum distribution. If you start, you don't have to keep it going. If you know what I'm saying? As long as you're working, you don't have to take the required minimum distribution. So
Mhm.
that's something I want to keep in mind. And of course, as you know, um, we did the little scenario a few weeks back where someone borrowed from their 401k plan. So that is, they had the side hustle going, which
Mhm.
people need to do. So they're working for company A. They've got a
Mhm.
side hustle going. they borrow money from the company's 401 from their 401k, and then
Mm-hmm.
they use that to fund their organization there. Do they have to pay taxes? No, because it's a loan. Right?
Okay.
They're still working for that company, so they can take advantage of that company benefit. Does that make sense?
Oh, okay. And then as long as they're paying, they pay back they're their own lender.
Yes.
All
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. And then what happens when they leave the company?
Meaning,
So they borrow the money. Let's say they they want to open a winery.
mm,
So they borrow the money and they take that money and they put it into the winery. And a year goes by and the winery is doing so well that they decide that they are going to leave their job and concentrate fully on the winery.
right.
Okay. So they set up a corporation. Oh, this is going to get complicated, so stay with me. They set up a corporation and they go to work for that corporation.
Okay.
Okay. They're the corporation that they set up. So then they
Right.
take the monies that they had at their old 401k, they roll them into a 401k at their new corporation. They haven't touched it. No foul, no fluff, no foul. That loan that they had, they can roll that into their new corporation's 401k. And now they have a loan attached to their 401k plan, right? And they still have the 5 years to pay it off. So this may work.
Oh, okay.
Right? This may work. They gotta pay that off monthly, but that might work for them.
Because if they're doing a loan for themselves, there's no interest on that, right?
The interest is there. It's usually pretty low.
Pretty much lower
Most,
than the regular on the
yeah,
market
most loans,
interest.
yeah, on K plans are like a prime plus 1 or 2%. So
Okay, okay. Well,
pretty low.
that makes a better choice
Yeah,
than going to an outside commercial.
right. Now the
But they got to
scenario I
put it
got,
back
yeah, I still
because if
there.
not, they got a tax penalty, right?
Yes,
Okay.
if they leave the company and they have a loan outstanding and they just leave and go start enjoying the good life. Now the amount in that loan that's outstanding, now it becomes taxable. And we're going to add that. So let's say you borrowed 20,000, you paid 5,000 back, you got a $15,000 note left there, you leave the company. Now we've just increased your income by $15,000. That's how you're going to pay tax on that.
Okay.
So so if you're thinking about starting your second chapter and you're working with Crystal and you need some funding and you think you want to, much to my chagrin, rob your 401k, then
Well, we wouldn't be. They wouldn't be robbing. They'd be borrowing.
borrowing. Let's talk about how to get that done in the most tax efficient way.
Okay.
Something might work for you. But I have seen a lot of people fund their company startups with 401k money. It's not something that I recommend, but I've seen a lot of people do that. I'll just say it like that.
And if they're diligent, then and you highly recommend that they pay it back, then it's not a bad thing, right?
Then it's not a bad thing if they can do it, right? So I mean, so are you talking about the situation where they borrowed the money, they started their second company with it, they rolled the assets? Is this what you're talking about?
Yes.
They rolled their 401k to their new company's 401k that they set up, their new corporation's 401k. That would be that'd be a really good thing. Their new corporation's 401k, and I mean real corporations like articles of incorporated and whatever else needs to have with a corporation. So they've got that going. Schedule C's and stuff, and then they continue to pay that loan off. And eventually they do, then yay, we're good. No tax liability. They got the money back. They borrowed it from themselves. It's they're still whole and complete,
Mm-hmm.
and life is good. Life is really
Mm.
really good. So that's
Okay.
a really good scenario if you can get to them before they leave the other
Mm.
company. Now, let's
Okay.
say they do leave the other company and they've got that money in an IRA, an individual retirement account. They've got that money in
Mm-hmm.
the IRA, and it's growing and doing quite well. And then they decide, ooh, I need to tap into that money so I can start my new company. I need some working capital for the new company. Well, you cannot borrow from the IRA, and you can only make a distribution, and that distribution will be taxed unless it's a Roth IRA.
Mm.
Yeah. Now, when I was going down these questions here, um, we got to this point, and someone brought up the concept of a backdoor Roth. Have you heard that? Have you heard that
I
term?
have not heard of a backdoor Roth. And what exactly is a backdoor Roth?
Well, it's a little bit sneaky, but there are um, uh, wage earning issues for the amount of money that you can use to actually make a contribution to the Roth section of a 401 of an IRA. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So if you um, take the money that you contribute to your 401k plan and you roll that money into an IRA,
Mm-hmm.
and then you convert your IRA to a Roth IRA, pay the taxes then.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you make too much money to contribute to a Roth IRA, you found a way to actually circumvent that because you have actually rolled your assets into an IRA. There's no income limit there. And then you've taken that money that's inside your IRA and you've merely converted that into the Roth section of an IRA. Life is good. Now, here's the
Mm.
kicker: you can't go backwards. You can't take the Roth IRA money if you decide to go back to work and stick it back into your 401k. Once it becomes a Roth section, an IRA in the Roth section of your IRA, it's got to stay there. As
Okay.
I'm not sure why you would want to do that anyway, but just know that you can't do that.
You can't do that.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. So the backdoor IRA is we move the money from the 401k to the IRA, no taxes, no penalties, no nothing there. Then we
Mm-hmm.
convert the money from the traditional IRA into the Roth IRA, and we pay taxes on that. So in
Okay.
years like we have where um, uh, the stock market did not do very well, your stock price is very low compared to what you
Mm-hmm.
bought it, your tax liability is low. That's a good time to make this thing happen. We see a lot of folks doing it then, where they can reduce their tax liability, get that money inside the Roth section of a IRA, and let it grow tax free.
Okay. All righty then. So we want to go on to the next question.
Number five, if I own my own home, can I do a reverse mortgage? Is it a better way to fund my retirement, especially with growing interest rates? So I think what they're trying to say is if I own my own home, can I do a reverse mortgage? That's one question. And
Mm-hmm.
using a reverse mortgage, is that a better way to fund my retirement, especially when interest rates are increasing? So let's break that down a little bit. So if you own your own home, can you do a reverse mortgage? Yes, most definitely. Is that a good
Mm-hmm.
thing to do? For a lot of people, it is because for a lot of people, doing that reverse mortgage means you don't have to pay the mortgage, and that could be one of our biggest expenses. So
Right.
if you reach the age of 62 and you've got $40,000 or so or more left on your reverse mortgage, I'm sorry, left on your mortgage, then you can do a
Mm-hmm.
reverse mortgage. You cannot be kicked out of the house. The payments will be made, and the bank owns your house. So the long and short of it is that you don't have a house note. which can help a lot of people. However, you can't pass the house down, right? You can't pass the
Mm-hmm.
house to your children. Um, they do get a chance to buy the house from the bank, but you cannot
Right.
pass the home down to your children. So when we think about um, generational wealth, reverse mortgage is not a really good part of that. And I have some colleagues that would love to talk with you about strategies that you can use with regard to your reverse mortgage to build income. We can do that, right?
Mm-hmm.
For example, using your reverse mortgage to perhaps buy a duplex where you live in one side and you get rent out of the other side.
Mm-hmm.
So
And I
if you
think
own your own
also,
home, what's that?
and I said, I think also, if whoever's advising you, depending on the age that you're doing it. So let's say I think they have to be 62, right? Is
62,
that
you're spot on. Yep.
62? Well, with the longevity of most of us today, if we take care of ourselves, we probably got another 10, 15 years um, that we can be fully functional.
I would
And
hope.
I would hope so, right?
Yeah.
But I think it's a very intentional strategy is to help whoever, if you want to pass your home on down, generational wealth, then um, groom a child, one of your children, or nieces or nephews, or someone within your family, and make sure by the time that time comes that their credit is in great standing and that they're actually bank loan ready, and that they could then at that point be able to buy the home to keep the home in the family. But that's intentional. You just can't
Yes.
assume that that person is going to appear, 10, 15 years later. No, you got to prepare them and groom them all the way
Sure.
until, and know that this is what's going to happen. We're going to keep the house in the family. One or two of these individuals should be able to be in a position to buy.
And that's not a bad plan to stick. And I'm glad you brought that up. When we start talking about wealth of a family and building familial wealth, sticking in that into that discussion, the reverse mortgage slash someone buying the home, whatever, that putting that in and how Medicare looks in that situation with regard to providing someone support. Putting that
Mm-hmm.
in the mix is very, very smart. So thank you for bringing that up. That's a really good point. How does that reverse mortgage affect my family's wealth?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you have that situation where your family says, we just want you to be happy, spend your money, and die a quick death.
Yeah.
Then maybe they don't need the money from the house. Maybe they don't want that. But in
Mm-hmm.
the other situation, monies from a reverse mortgage might be enough for you to pay for a little bit better care than you've had, or
Right, and then they extend that link, but but you can't. I think the biggest thing I have heard about that is that as you say, that no one will be able to buy the house. But if it wasn't intentional in the first place, even if you leave the house to them, they still could lose the home because it wasn't intentional. You were not preparing them to be the owner of that home. So it
Mhm.
really doesn't matter one way or the other. If you're not going to do it, you're not going to be intentional on the front end. It doesn't matter whether you're on the back or the front end. But I'd say utilize that money while you're living, and prepare someone in the family to be able to maintain the house. And even if you do a duplex, you still have income that can actually continue on the
Sure.
generational wealth. That's what
Yeah,
I say.
I think
Especially,
you're spot on.
right, and nowadays buying real estate in any state, it's not just the state of California, but in any state is very challenging now because there's not enough supply. Um, and people are not moving out of their homes. So it actually is a great revenue booster as well for the real estate industry. So something to think about.
Hmm. Yeah, very
Yeah.
much so. Very much so. Great point.
Mhm.
Yeah, we
Mhm.
all we all we are all suffering from that lack of inventory.
Mhm.
That
Because our young people may not be able to buy a house anyway because there's not going to be anything out there for them to buy, and if they're only building income property for the developer, then that's not leaving you that opportunity to share in the American dream. So I think we do have to be much more deliberate and creative about how we go about that in the future.
I think you're right, and I think it's tough to have that conversation unless you've seen it. But it's definitely a conversation you want to have with your children. I would think as early as possible. Those conversations about yes, owning property is better than leasing property, and
Mm-hmm.
you know, I don't know when you start talking to someone about taxes, but um, talking to people about how to make money. We do live in a capitalistic society, so wishing for this utopia of bartering and acting upon it just doesn't work that well for most of us that need to
Right.
buy things. So
Mm-hmm.
we have a capitalistic society, right, wrong, or indifferent. How do we survive here? What do we need to do to make this work for us? And I think a reverse mortgage can be a big part of that. I know that there are many folks who are just barely hanging on to that house, and what they really want is to pass that on to their kids because that gives them a step up, as it were, with regard to not having to make that house payment. And
Mm.
I can definitely appreciate that, and I don't see
Mm-hmm.
anything wrong with it. That is your deal. You bring them in, bring the kids in to the house, and work things from that way. If you want to keep that house in your family, let's put that on the table. Let's have a discussion about how to make that. So for so many families, and I hope I'm not being too um, well, I don't want to say jaundiced, but too over the top here. But for many families, they're looking at your jewelry anyway, right? So let's I mean, so let's take a look at the house and the land as well, right?
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, I agree.
All right. So, and then when it comes to interest rates, that's usually not a concern. I mean, interest rates go up and down. This is a government program to keep you in your home so that you have a place to go or to be until you pass away. So you cannot be kicked out. Interest rates going up and down are not going to affect you and the payment that you get. And so they call it a reverse mortgage, but in actuality, it's a way for the government to allow you to stay in your home.
Okay.
Let's go to question number 6. It says, do rising interest rates make paying back a reverse mortgage a bad idea to help fund my retirement? So, this is a really interesting question. Do rising interest rates make paying back a reverse mortgage a bad idea to help fund my retirement? So the premise of the question is a bit false. And so what I hope they mean is, do I need to pay back that reverse mortgage because we are saying mortgage? And the answer to that
Mm-hmm.
is no, you do not. You do not. Do my kids need to pay back that reverse mortgage? And the answer to that is no, they do not. The reverse mortgage just sticks with you. And if your house gets paid off, now we got something to do. Now we've got a house that's worth X and it's growing in market value,
Mm-hmm.
you get to stay in that house till you pass away.
Mm-hmm.
So there's no real cost to you. Um, some might say that you may want to die before the house gets paid off. So you do not pay that reverse mortgage back. You do not do that. You don't have to worry about that. You get to stay in your house till you pass away.
Okay.
Yeah. Your kids, your relatives, that's a whole different kettle of fish there. Whole
Right.
different. So
And
when
that's
it comes to, go ahead.
and that's part of that conversation we're having. They are the ones then would be they either have to buy the house or the house would be the bank would take the house back.
Bingo.
Mm.
So you want to have that discussion on what are we going to do, juniors? What do you call young ladies that are about to be juniors? What are young ladies? If
I
guys are
guess
juniors,
I guess they could be juniors as well. My girlfriend is an actual junior. Her mother and her have the same name.
okay. So
Yeah, so
lady
that
and
she's a junior. I just hadn't thought of it as gender.
specific.
A
It kind of
juniorette.
is, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
Juniors and juniorettes.
Junior and juniorette.
Yeah. So you can put them in the mix. This is where you stay. You are in the family. I mean, that's a kind of an interesting discussion. So yeah, you don't have to pay it back. Is it a bad idea to help fund your retirement? I would say no. It's a good idea to help fund your retirement. It may be the only
Right.
idea you have that's funding your retirement, because for most of us, taking that house note off gives us a place to live. We bring a little bit of that Social Security in, and maybe we got a little site time site time site or what do we call it? A side part-time little jobby job there.
Right, exactly.
Make ends meet, and because we don't have
Yeah,
a house payment, we're in pretty good shape,
right.
right?
Your passive income,
There
you're making money to, your little side gig to keep you from being bored.
there you go.
Because
Okay.
it used to be you'd retire and that might be it for you. You might get 2 years after
Right?
retirement. So you
Right?
actually have to have a plan to keep yourself alive.
Yes. So
And,
we've reached close to our hour here. So before
okay.
bad things want to happen, I just want to sign off. Do you want to get the last word? First, I
I
want to
want to
say thank you
share.
and welcome home.
Oh, thank you, thank you, thank you. I do want to share something that I read. This is kind of the reverse of what we've been talking about, but there was an article in Fortune magazine under personal finance. So it's a couple who retired early with $4.3 million, and they're part of I guess they call them FIRE, Financial Independent Retire Early Movement,
Hmm.
and says the FIRE lifestyle is wearing thin. And what they're saying is they don't want to just keep throwing money on the pile and keep being cheap. So the way they actually got to that $4.3 million, they started. This is 50-something-year-old husband and wife who joined the FIRE movement 6 years ago with 4.3 saved. And what they did was they just were super frugal through all of their 50s and their 60s, or probably all of their lives.
Hmm.
And so they were able to accumulate that amount of money. But they were saying that you can be just as have financial anxiety trying not to spend money as you are spending money, right? So it's
Right?
hard, right? So what they did was they lived off rice and beans.
Oh my.
The husband was he had a six-figure income. He was a Manhattan lawyer. He lived off rice and beans so he could retire early. And he and the wife flipped real estate to get to where they are today, which helped them sock away $10,000 in savings, accumulate $925,000 in assets, and earn $4.2 million in investments, plus $910,000 in real estate debt. But now that they've achieved financial independence, they feel paralyzed with the fear of spending money that they worked so hard to get. So they spent they spent their whole life planning and saving for retirement. Now they're afraid to spend the money that they spent for saving for their retirement.
Yeah. Yeah. Somehow I don't think I'm going to have that problem. I don't know why, but I don't think I'm going to have that problem. But it does suggest that balance is a good thing, right?
It does.
It does suggest that.
And I think that's how we're going to end the show. So
There you go.
balance is a good thing.
Balance is good. As always, Crystal, it was a pleasure. I can't wait to see you next week at 2:00, right?
Yes, 2 o'clock, because I'm still doing biz camp.
Right. Well, thank you for joining me for Conversations on the Patio, where we talk about questions that you should have learned in school and hopefully questions that you can talk with your family. I'm Jevon Thomas, and for Crystal Mitchell, I'm going to say so long, and I'll see you next time.
See you guys. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.